report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
GOP hat trick. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Republicans have won enough seats to maintain control of the U.S. House. Come January, they'll also rule the Senate and White House.
Republicans have everything. They've got the Senate, the House, the presidency, and certainly the Supreme Court.
University of Virginia political analyst Larry Sabato.
The House is actually the weakest link because the Republican majority will be very thin.
Still, a majority's a majority, says House Speaker Mike Johnson.
We are unified and energized and ready to go. We have to deliver for the American people beginning on day one in the new Congress, and we will be ready for that.
In the Senate, the GOP has voted to make South Dakota's John Thune their new majority leader.
We are excited to reclaim the majority and to get to work with our colleagues in the House to enact President Trump's agenda. We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities.
Republicans have a 53 to 47 seat majority in the Senate, though one race, the Bob Casey-Dave McCormick race in Pennsylvania, is headed for a recount, and we'll talk more about that a little later in the broadcast. President-elect Trump sending shockwaves through Washington with his pick of Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Correspondent Aisha Hasney.
Gaetz served in the House Judiciary Committee. He conducted oversight of the Justice Department. This Senate confirmation could be a tough one. He's considered a firebrand by many. He's divided Republicans on Capitol Hill.
Gaetz has already resigned from Congress as he campaigns for the AG post. It only takes a simple majority for Senate confirmation, but still, that could be an uphill climb for Matt Gaetz.
This is going to be a test of the new Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, and how much he wants to actually play ball with Donald Trump.
Ted Ryan is founder of the American Majority.
It was a very clear signal from Donald Trump with Gaetz' nomination. You will never weaponize the DOJ against me again.
Gaetz was the subject of a House ethics probe, but he never was formally charged. And now those charges are dropped for good since Gaetz has resigned from Congress. Here's legal analyst Laura Jarrett.
Of all the president-elect's choices so far, this one landing like a grenade. Gaetz, a well-known combative defender of Mr. Trump, an attorney by training, but one with no experience as a government prosecutor or a judge, now tapped to lead the nation's premier law enforcement agency, the very same one he lambasted for years, all setting up a rocky path to his confirmation.
We'll see how it goes. President-elect Trump has also chosen Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat, to serve as his director of national intelligence. The 43-year-old Gabbard would oversee 18 intelligence agencies in that role. Big news out of the Buckeye State. Ohio state lawmakers have approved a statewide transgender bathroom bill. It restricts bathroom use at school among transgender students. Governor Mike DeWine hasn't said yet whether he'll sign it. Pro-family groups are applauding the legislation in the name of protecting privacy rights. New study from the Cleveland Clinic's uncovered some concerns when it comes to COVID.
The study found that COVID-19 can be deadly for years after a person gets sick. The study shows that those who get COVID are twice as likely to suffer a fatal heart attack, stroke, or death for up to 3 years after a COVID diagnosis. The risk is even higher for those who are hospitalized with COVID or have a previous history of heart disease. Dr. Stanley Hazen of the Cleveland Clinic says there's likely to be a rise in cardiovascular disease globally in the coming years due to the pandemic. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
The state of New Jersey's issued its first drought warning in 8 years. Officials say it'll take about 10 inches of rain to dent the drought, which has contributed to the worst wildfire season in more than 2 decades in the Garden State. More from Fox News meteorologist Janice Dean.
We need that rainfall. We're just not going to get it in areas that need to see it, where we have active fires burning.
Because of the lack of rain this fall, there are outdoor burn bans in effect across much of Pennsylvania and all of New York until at least the end of November. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg says a day is coming in the not-too-distant future when smartphones will become obsolete. Imagine that. The tech guru predicting that sometime in the 2030s, smart glasses will replace smartphones as the next big thing in computing. The first smartphone, by the way, hit the market in 1994, 30 years ago already. An Olympic skiing champ is making a comeback.
This is classic Lindsey Vonn. Lindsey Vonn, here we go!
40-year-old Vonn says she's coming out of retirement to rejoin the U.S. ski team. She's medaled 3 times, including a gold in downhill. Her last competition was almost 6 years ago. Vonn suffered a long series of injuries, including broken arms, legs, torn knee ligaments, and concussions.
Correspondent Deborah Rodriguez, and still to come on the Noon Report for Thursday, Senate race headed to overtime, hate crime at the U of R, and we're celebrating the seatbelt.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking a weak area of low pressure that'll mean a little rain and a little wintry mix for parts of the area over the next 12 hours. After that, we look dry through the weekend by and large. We'll have forecast details coming up in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. In the meantime, let's check the stories that are making news where you live, all across New York and Pennsylvania. The U.S. Senate race in Pennsylvania appears to be headed for a recount. Correspondent Griff Jenkins.
Democrat Senator Bob Casey refusing to concede to Republican Dave McCormick. McCormick's campaign putting out this statement saying Senator-elect McCormick's lead is insurmountable, which the AP made clear in calling the race a recount will be a waste of time and taxpayer money.
By law, that recount must start by next Wednesday and be completed no later than Wednesday, November 27th, the day before Thanksgiving. The statewide SUNY system in New York has seen a second straight year of increased student enrollment. Overall enrollment at SUNY's 64 campuses rose by 2.3% this fall. Statewide, about 376,000 students are enrolled in the SUNY system. New York Senator Chuck Schumer is reacting to a series of disturbing posters that popped up over the weekend at the University of Rochester. Here's reporter Liz Warner.
Hundreds of posters featuring images of faculty and staff members with the word wanted have been displayed on campus recently, with captions including wanted for murder and wanted for connection to war crimes, which are believed to be a reference to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and or the university's handling of campus protests. Senator Schumer took to X, noting targeting Jewish and other professors with wanted posters is rank intimidation and anti-Semitic. The senator says he's in contact with U of R administrators and he's urging a swift investigation. Anyone with information is being asked to please come forward. Liz Warner, New York.
The anti-Semitic posters, which first appeared Sunday evening, have since been removed, but for many on campus, the damage is already done.
It feels like almost this is a call to violence. It creates a sense of anxiety in a very hostile environment. Campus is supposed to be everyone's home, and when one group of people starts to be very negative or violent towards another group, it's hard to make this place feel like home.
The Jewish Federation of Greater Rochester says the wanted posters are a hate crime, and the state and even federal government need to investigate. The owner of a celebrity squirrel that was euthanized by the state of New York is now striking back. Mark Lungo of Chemung County has filed a lawsuit over the demise of his beloved pet, Peanut, who had millions of followers on social media.
Peanut was my shining star. It's the sanctuary is called Peanut's Freedom Farm, but so we now have a duty and hopefully get this bill passed. Peanut's law is being talked about, to make sure that this never happens to another family and another animal ever again.
That audio courtesy of WETM TV in Elmira. Peanut was euthanized and tested for rabies last month. Those rabies results came back negative. The ongoing drought in Pennsylvania may lead to a shortage of Christmas trees this holiday season. Tree farmers admit the lack of rain has been tough. especially on younger trees.
The root system just doesn't go deep enough to get the moisture, and a lot of them just can't hang on. This is where we really get hurt, and there's a shortage of Christmas trees, and this keeps the shortage going on because you can't get your new ones to survive.
Pennsylvania, by the way, is the fourth leading Christmas tree producing state in the country, behind only Michigan, North Carolina, and Oregon. The Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission is looking for the public's help in developing new guidelines to address school bullying and harassment. A virtual meeting will happen next Thursday, November 21st, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That commission is hoping to get additional feedback from teachers, students, and parents. A meeting tonight will discuss the future of the water supply. In Syracuse, New York, advocates are calling for a state of emergency due to concerns over levels of lead in the drinking water. This environmental activist says it's time to get the lead out.
Let's go forward. Let's remove the lead pipes. Let's fix the water system here in Syracuse.
But the police chief is adamant testing results show the water is safe to drink in the Salt City. A 12-year-old Western New York boy donated 500 coats this week to the annual Coats for Kids collection drive. Cam Higgins of Lockport's been doing this every year the past 7 years, since he was just 5 years old. Here he is in 2017.
I wondered how kids and adults didn't have any coats.
And here he is just yesterday.
It makes me feel great, and just to know that these coats are really going to some people who really need it.
What an amazing kid. Cam Higgins of Lockport, New York. Higgins sends out texts, calls, and emails to family and friends well in advance of his coat collection efforts. He tells WIVB-TV that he has no plans to stop anytime soon in helping out the Coats for Kids collection drive in Western New York. Odd accident in Amish country in Pennsylvania. A man with a prosthetic leg got that appendage stuck while driving in Lancaster County recently. The artificial limb got lodged on the accelerator as the man was making a turn. He wound up hitting another vehicle before crashing through a fence and launching into a field. Today we honor 2 yards of fabric that can save your life. Bree Tennis has more on National Seatbelt Day.
The National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act required all new cars to have seatbelts installed in 1969. But having seatbelts and getting people to use them are two different things. People didn't really click until 1986 when every state, with the exception of New Hampshire, required drivers and passengers to buckle up. The NTSB says 92% of us use a seatbelt every day, but males ages 16 to 24 are the least likely to click it. I'm Bree Tennis.
All right, Bree, thank you for that. And for the record, New York State was the first state to make seatbelt use mandatory, and that was in 1984. The 2-minute drill next in sports as the noon report continues, right here on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was close, but as the saying goes, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. 124 to 123, the final at the Garden last night as the Knicks fell to the Bulls. Karl Anthony Towns exploded for 46 points and grabbed 10 boards, but his efforts, along with 24 from Jalen Brunson and 20 from Mikal Bridges, was not quite enough. The Knicks now 5-6 on the season. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both had double-doubles, 36 points, 10 assists for Tatum, 24 points, 12 boards for Brown. The Celtics bounced back to defeat Brooklyn 139 to 114. Philadelphia 76ers fell to Cleveland 144 to 106 on a night when both Joel Embiid and Paul George were rested. Philadelphia has now dropped 7 of their last 8 and are 2-9 on the season. Meantime, Cleveland remains the only unbeaten team in the NBA. They are now 13-0. Elsewhere on the hardwood, your winners were the Magic, Thunder, Rockets, Bucks, Giannis had 59 points in that one, 22 of his team's first 24 points. Also winning the Spurs, they got 50 points from Victor Wembanyama as they won their game. Lakers, Blazers, and Kings also picking up the W. On the ice, the Penguins lost in an overtime contest to the Detroit Red Wings 3-2. The Pens got goals from Brian Roost and Anthony Beauvillier. The Maple Leafs also won in overtime 4-3 over Washington. Utah down Carolina 4-1. The Avs doubled up the Kings 4-2, and the Ducks dropped a 3-2 decision to the Golden Knights. And Aaron Rodgers says he's going to play football next season. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, man, thank you very much. Still to come on the Noon Report for Thursday, uproar over Gates pick, GOP hat trick, and pro-life wins at the ballot box.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. The historian's task of making sense of the past involves far more than just merely examining events and relaying the details. It involves a lot of interpretation. In practice, especially in our upside-down world where so often facts are considered fiction and fiction considered facts, history is manipulated and used to advance a social agenda. For example, those who view history from a neo-Marxist perspective look for those who are the oppressors and those who are the oppressed. However, they don't look for those who actually committed acts of oppression or who were victims of it. Rather, they've already grouped humanity into predetermined categories, so they know going in who the good guys are and who the bad guys were. In this view, anyone with power is an oppressor, and therefore evil, and all without power are marginalized and oppressed victims, and therefore innocent and virtuous. Now, in response, there's been an equal but opposite ideological backlash, one that has arisen to combat this understanding of American and Western identity. In this version, the focus of American history is Abraham Lincoln, who supposedly destroyed the federal system, states' rights, and the 10th Amendment by centralizing power in the national government. FDR, who vastly expanded Washington's power over the economy, and especially World War II and its aftermath. By supporting Stalin against Hitler, the U.S. condemned Eastern Europe to Soviet domination, and then opened the door for communism to infiltrate the West. This, in turn, made possible the leftist takeover of our schools, our institutions, and our government. A few, from this perspective, even argue that America was on the wrong side of the Second World War, and instead should have supported the fascist against the communist. You see, what's happened is that any truth from either of these sides has been so distorted beyond recognition. It's been forged into ideology. The biblical account, in contrast, is not an ideology built on partial truth, but an interpretive framework that, above all, gets the human condition right. Humans are not mere victims of the flow of history. Humans are responsible actors in history. They're made in the image of God. Humans are not only central to the story, but uniquely valuable within it. We're also deeply fallen, often operating from selfish or racist or other sinful motives. We need not think of America or Americans as flawless or inherently evil. But even more and most importantly, we know that history is not aimless. It's moving toward a conclusion superintended by the one whose kingdom will come on earth as it is in heaven. However, that kingdom will never be ushered in by the ideological purists from either the left or the right, but only by the risen Christ, who is Lord of heaven and earth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Glenn Sunshine, and for more resources to live like a Christian today, go to breakpoint.org.
Thank you, John. Let's take things outside next. Meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Rather cloudy. There'll be some light rain in portions of western New York and western Pennsylvania. High temperatures will range in the 40s and low 50s. A little bit of rain this evening, mainly western Pennsylvania. Otherwise, mainly cloudy tonight. Low temps 30s to near 40. Tomorrow, mostly sunshine in central New York. Elsewhere, clouds yield to some sun, except close to Lake Erie, where it stays rather cloudy. High temperatures tomorrow, upper 40s to the middle 50s, and mostly sunny and crisp on Saturday.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Here's what's happening Thursday, November 14th. No meaningful rain in the forecast as firefighters try to get the upper hand on a stubborn wildfire along New York's bone-dry border with New Jersey. Reporter Tom Hansen.
The Jennings Creek fire has burned nearly 4,300 acres, about half of it now contained. On the northern end of Manhattan, a new brush fire began yesterday, scorching trees and blanketing parts of the city with smoke. There have now been more than 200 fires in the city in the last 2 weeks. New York's Long Island not spared either. Multiple wildfires breaking out there too. One of them, police say, started by 20-year-old Jonathan Quiles, a volunteer firefighter who was charged with arson.
Because of the lack of rain of late, there are outdoor burn bans in effect across much of Pennsylvania and all of New York. America's moms and dads swung hard to Donald Trump on Election Day.
Exit polls show that parents with kids under the age of 18 switched parties this time around. President Trump won 46% of them in 2020, but this time took 53%, a 7% increase. There were a lot of issues at play, but some analysts point to Kamala Harris's support for transgenderism, which is becoming a major problem in public schools.
Correspondent Michael Harrington. Republicans have the Senate, they'll hold the House, and that means they'll call the shots on Capitol Hill come January. More from reporter Scott McFarland.
Republicans now projected to have full control of Washington, the White House, the Senate, and the U.S. House. Our latest CBS News projection is Republicans have hit that magic number in the House, 218 seats.
Reporter Nicole Killian has more on the GOP trifecta.
A clean sweep across the board.
We come out of this excited to deliver the America First agenda for the American people.
House Republicans celebrated victory Wednesday night as they officially retained control of the majority. The GOP securing the House, Senate, and the White House.
Isn't it nice to win?
President-elect Donald Trump gave a rallying talk to rank-and-file members. The president-elect also threw his support behind Speaker Mike Johnson, who was unanimously renominated as Speaker for the next Congress.
In the Senate, Republicans have elected John Thune of South Dakota their new majority leader.
We will do the job that the founders intended us to do in the United States Senate and that the American people intend us to do. And that right now, after this mandate election, to work with this president on an agenda that unwinds a lot of the damage of the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda.
And when it comes to the cabinet building process, President-elect Trump is sending shockwaves through the nation's capital by nominating former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to serve as Attorney General.
We ride or die with Donald John Trump to the end.
Gaetz was once embroiled in a sex trafficking investigation by the U.S. Justice Department, the same department that he is tapped to lead. No charges were ever brought. Gaetz maintains he's innocent, though he was the subject of a House ethics probe. That probe has now ended because Gaetz has resigned from Congress. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
Matt Gaetz is very bright. I think he's qualified. He'll have a hearing and he'll have some tough questions to answer. But to every Republican, please follow a process to give President Trump the ability to pick the people he thinks can do the job.
Trump says he picked the conservative firebrand Gaetz to help end the weaponization of the U.S. Justice Department. Big news out of Pennsylvania, that disputed U.S. Senate contest between Democrat incumbent Bob Casey and Republican challenger Dave McCormick. It's headed to overtime. There will be a recount because the margin of difference in the vote is less than 0.5%. McCormick leads Casey by less than 30,000 votes out of more than 7 million cast. And by law, that recount must begin by next Wednesday and be completed no later than Wednesday, November 27th. A new report today finds drug overdose deaths in this country are down 14% from last year. Brandon Marshall's a researcher at Brown University.
I think there's real reason for hope here that we might finally be seeing a reversal of the drug overdose crisis in this country.
According to the CDC, there were 97,000 drug overdose deaths last year. How do you feel about the death penalty? Your answer may depend on your age.
Younger generations of U.S. adults are far less likely than older generations to favor the death penalty for convicted murderers. As a result, overall support for the death penalty in the U.S. has fallen to 53% today, according to a new Gallup poll. That's a level not seen since the early 1970s.
Correspondent Jim Krasula. And then there's this. Password manager NordPass is out with its yearly list of the world's most popular passwords. For the second year in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top the list. It's followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Also on the list this year are the word password and the word secret, the world's most popular passwords. You're tuned into the Noon Report for Thursday on Family Life.
It's Faith Under Fire from Family Life News. I'm Greg Gillespie, and today we get perspectives on pro-life victories on abortion at the ballot box. Kelsey Pritchard is the State Public Affairs Director for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life in South Dakota, one of 3 states where majorities of voters turned down pro-abortion amendments.
We had victories in Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota, and those victories over their all trimester abortion ballot measures are really huge, and they're the first kind of victories we've seen over abortion amendments since the Dobbs decision. And they send a very big message to the abortion industry, to the left, to George Soros, which have been pushing these. They poured $110 million into Florida, yet still lost. When the GOP fights these ballot measures and exposes how extreme they are, these things fail. When people know what they're voting on and understand that abortion ballot measures allow abortion at any point and they take away parental rights and they force taxpayers to fund abortion, the voters overall reject that agenda. With these victories, we have a way forward and a map of how we can defeat these ballot measures when we see them again, perhaps next year or 2 years from now.
I know in 2022 we were told that abortion is a losing proposition for conservatives. What turned things around here, November 2024?
Yeah, I would say in 2022, I know the media tried to highlight and say that, the pro-life movement is over. But really what we saw in elections in 2022 was we saw that a lot of pro-life governors and governors who had passed laws to protect unborn babies win very big. One of those governors was Ron DeSantis, and he was really the key to defeating this ballot measure in that state. He explained to people, if you vote for this, you're going to eliminate parental consent. Your daughter won't be able to take Tylenol at school without you filling out a bunch of forms, but she'll be able to get an abortion, a late-term abortion, without you ever knowing. That could subject her to an abuser. This could subject women and girls to traffickers, taking them in for abortions. And he really made it clear to people. And because he did that, the voters rejected this amendment in Florida. And so this is not only the blueprint for fighting abortion ballot measures, this is a blueprint for when you run for office and you're part of the GOP. Because the Democrats will always make abortion one of their key issues. They're going to continue to push it. And the GOP needs to expose how extreme they are in the issue of not wanting any limits whatsoever. And they need to contrast that with a compassionate position for women and girls and for unborn children, and to bring back the humanity of the unborn child and to highlight the science of fetal development.
Our guest is Kelsey Pritchard. She is with the Susan B. Anthony organization, and it really is a question of how everything is packaged. New York State, they called it not an abortion amendment, but an equal rights amendment. You're talking about it's not just protecting women's health care, it's affecting a fetus, a pregnancy. What are the key points for people who want to understand how to speak to conservatives, how to speak to liberals, how the folks who try to find a middle ground on abortion, the marketing, the public relations, the explanation of the real issues really is at the heart of all this, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you look at the American people and what they think on the issue of abortion, poll after poll actually shows that around 2/3 of Americans support limiting abortion after the first trimester, or around that 15-week mark when science shows that they can feel pain. It's not the conservative polls that show this, it's polls across the board. And so the important point here is to show that the Democrats have come to this radical position where they don't support any limit on abortion at any point in pregnancy, not in the second trimester, not even in the third trimester. And when people understand that, they reject the Democrats. They rejected Kamala Harris's extreme position. We were in 8 battleground states talking to voters about how extreme she was on the issue of abortion and changing voters' minds through those conversations. So people rejected her extremism. The more that we can bring to light the science at 15 weeks and after the first trimester, we're talking about a baby who can feel pain, who can smile, who can suck their thumb, who you can know if it's a boy or a girl at this point. You can also start to see on the ultrasounds if the baby resembles mom or dad a little bit, and the right to life is the most fundamental right that all other rights emanate from.
Kelsey Pritchard is a public affairs director for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life. I'm Greg Gillespie, Family Life News.
All right, great interview. Thank you, Greg. Faith Under Fire comes your way Thursdays during the Noon Report or online anytime, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. On the midday weather map, we're seeing the area of high pressure that brought the sparkling skies yesterday retreating up into eastern Canada and low pressure in Indiana coming east. That spells somewhat unsettled weather over the next 12 hours or so. Then high pressure builds in for what looks like a cool, dry weekend. Showers are back late Sunday night and Monday. For this afternoon, rather cloudy. There'll be some light rain in portions of western New York and western Pennsylvania. A few ice pellets or wet snowflakes initially for some. High temperatures will range in the 40s and low 50s. A little bit of rain this evening, mainly western Pennsylvania. Otherwise, mainly cloudy tonight. Low temps 30s to near 40. Tomorrow, mostly sunshine in central New York. Elsewhere, clouds yield to some sun, except close to Lake Erie, where it stays rather cloudy. High temperatures tomorrow, upper 40s to the middle 50s, and mostly sunny and crisp on Saturday.
All right, Kevin, thank you. And finally at noon, let's celebrate one of America's favorite fermented foods. It's National Pickle Day.
First celebrated in New York City in 2001, this day celebrates the practice of pickling, which has existed for thousands of years. The process ensured preservation of provisions for travelers, as well as a dependable source of nutrition for those living through barren winters. While many foods are pickled, the cucumber emerges as the dominant food that most associate with the idea of both pickling and the word pickle itself. By the mid-17th century, cucumbers bought from Dutch settlers in New York would lay the foundation for the territory to be the perfect site for the introduction of the kosher dill pickle. So today, no matter what type you enjoy, dig into your favorite pickle. It shouldn't really be a dilemma, because celebrating the pickle should be the bread and butter of this day. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Do love those bread and butter pickles as well. Thank you, Brian. And that's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, November 14th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.